All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Wednesday. All right, today is just an introduction to the next section, is Paul's letter to Philemon. While Paul was in prison in Rome, he wrote several letters to churches that he had ministered to during his missionary travels. The book of Philemon was a personal letter to a prominent man in the church at Colossae. Paul pleads on behalf of Onesimus, a runaway slave from Philemon's house. Paul's intercession for him illustrates what Christ has done for us. As Paul interceded for a slave, so Christ intercedes for us, slaves to sin. As Onesimus was reconciled to Philemon, so we are reconciled to God through Christ. As Paul offered to pay the debts of a slave, so Christ paid our debt of sin. Like Onesimus, we must return to God, our Master, and serve Him.
Another example would be the story of the Good Samaritan, where the Good Samaritan paid the expenses of the
wounded man.
The wounded man. And we look at those stories as good stories and good lessons in the Bible, but then we often forget to correlate them to the same example that where Christ paid our price.
Yeah.
He paid our debt.
Yeah.
We don't often correlate the stories to the sacrifice of Christ.
Right. Christ paid our debt to God, because again, God is holy. That is his whole thing. He is holy above all else and cannot even look at sin.
Right.
And since we have fallen, and all of us have fallen, no matter what we do, we'll never ever be holy on our own.
Right.
Christ was holy, is holy.
Is holy.
And so God sees us through the lens of Jesus if we would just step into that frame of view.
Right.
If we just step in there, and He paid our debt, because we owe a debt. It's been from the beginning of Genesis all the way through. Sin needs to be reconciled with blood. Christ shed His blood to reconcile us back to God. So we owe Him everything. And Jesus said, take on His nature. His burden is light. He's not asking us to try to remember all these different rules and regulations that we think that this is going to impress God or make Him think any certain way of us. He's saying, just trust in Him, follow Him, treat people, your fellow person, your neighbor to you or whatever, justly and with passion and with love, compassion and with love. He's not asking you to sit there and try to remember every little nuance of the law. He's just not. That's not what he's already filled that. He did, and that's the one thing we couldn't do. And we can't. We couldn't even think about how to fulfill the law correctly, but He did.
We talk about how it's not always easy to follow Christ, and I agree. I still believe that it's not always easy.
No, it's not.
It's a difficult choice that you have to make several times a day, not just once in a lifetime. But at the same time, following Christ in that difficulty is so much more freedom, and He's carrying all the burden.
Yeah.
So even though we say it's difficult to follow Christ, Christ is the one doing all the work. We're just going to follow Him. So it's not the easiest trail to follow, but at the same time, it's such a better one than any other choice that's offered.
Very true. It just came to me as, which is easier?
That's what I'm trying to say. That right there, what you just said.
Yeah.
Which is easier?
Which is easier? Is it easier for us to drill down into the law and let's just take the Sabbath day, for example, and do and try to keep that completely? And there's a lot of, if we follow the Jewish customs of the Sabbath, there's a lot of very nuanced regulations on how to deal with the Sabbath day.
Yeah.
Is it easier for us to study that and try to conform to that than it is to deal with a difficult person in love?
Mm-hmm.
Which is easier? Obviously, we're going to say, well, I'd rather just figure out the law of the Sabbath than I would try to deal with the person in love. But that's what Jesus asks us to do. Deal with other people, even difficult ones, in love. That's really the issue right there. And we think, yeah, it's very hard to deal with that. I'd rather try to deal with the Sabbath. Try to do all the little things that are needed in the law rather than have to deal with people. And that's
It's physically impossible. It's humanly impossible to deal with all the rules and regs that the humans have put on earning salvation.
Yeah.
There's no possible human way to do that.
No. But I think that's really where it comes down to, is people would rather deal with, I'll take the burden of trying to deal with my own reconciliation through the law than to have to expose myself to other people,
right,
and try to live with my fellow humanity in love and compassion. And I think that's part of the problem.
It
is we don't have we don't have that mentality of it's easier for us to say, I can do this,
right,
but I can't do that. I can't open up to
Yeah.
people. I can't help people but I'm just going to retract and try to deal with what I think God wants is through the law.
Which really what God wants is, like Paul's doing here, setting the example of paying the price for a slave. So we're all slaves to sin.
We're all slaves to something.
Yeah, we're all sin. We're all
Yeah.
slaves to sin, and Christ gave us a freedom pass for that. And Paul is demonstrating this same story, not for saving us, but for looking to Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I'll say it again, I thank God for Christ that He rescued me from the dark pit of slavery that I was in, and you have the same story.
Absolutely.
All our stories are different, but they're all the same. We were slaves to something we didn't want to keep doing, and we didn't have really a way out, and Christ came along and picked us up, dusted us off, and put us on a new path, not to have to look back at that slimy pit of goo that we just came out of.
Yeah.
We don't want back into that again.
Right.
He showed us the light, and that's where we want to walk. We want to stay in the light of Christ. Okay. Hope everybody has a glorious day, and we'll talk to you later.